receive this question at least once a week in my Instagram inbox, the Twitter DMs, the emails. Would AI tools like ChatGPT take UX jobs away? And in this video, I'm going to try to explain myself as simply as possible, because it kind of like it boils your blood after a while when you kind of see this pattern. I see a lot of folk on LinkedIn posting how bad the existing automated UX research tools are, or AI tools which produce you personas, or if you go on ChatGPT right now and you type, give me a few customer segments, it's going to spit you out like the most basic things which you could never apply to the actual work, because it only learned from these basic templates and articles which are online. And don't get me wrong, all of those tools are impressive as they are. You know, you never had anything like that to date, right? But a quiz time here. What do all those tools have in common? Spend a couple of seconds thinking about it, and maybe even leave a comment down below with your answer. What we have in common, really, and what we're good at right now, is that we're producing impressive outputs. Outputs is a keyword here, nothing else. It's all about delivering something tangible. So the user goes into the tool, types in some information, and based on all the available data sets from the internet, through the learning models, it captures that intent and then gives some sort of output to the user. And then we can do something with it. And this is super important, because outputs alone don't make for successful work happen. And when I say successful work happen, meaning with some sort of business outcomes, sustainable community impact, or user experience or customer experience, so it's delightful but also efficient, and many other factors which, you know, matter for that specific user type. And you've seen me before use this framework in different videos. It's from Sadan's book, Outcomes versus Outputs. So ultimately, and kind of simply put, the AI tools right now are really good at giving us this, the very specific tangible outputs. And this is where you could throw in, let's say, things like visual means content, text, copy, anything what could be tagged as a format of sorts. It could be design systems, it could be a mock-up, it could be a design templates, because there are budding startups here and there who are promising you, if you enter something like create me a banking app, to give you 5 or 10 different mock-up screens, which you can jam with later on and update and so forth. So it's still super specific to the outputs. And we forget that UX really happens throughout that, from the specific inputs to the outputs, to the outcomes, to the impact. But most importantly, what experienced UX designers do is really focus on the outcomes, because that's where they can affect most and actually deliver measurable success. Because if you know what the outcome is required, what the goal is, and maybe even sustainability and bigger picture impact should be for the communities and global scale, then you can work backwards and say that your outputs should look just like this. And so you kind of work backwards, and it's much more meaningful for the user and for the business. And this is where we need to drop a pin here, because the AI tools, again, are really good at producing outputs, but not so much with outcomes. So if your work is about outputs only, then you're definitely in danger. Let's say if you're only producing icons, or if you're only producing, I don't know, like a design guide based system, or components, or drawing out buttons, but you're not thinking like a product designer, or you're not doing deep research to understand why you're doing what you're doing, or how does it link to the business outcomes, and you're not able to iterate over time to reflect on the business outcomes and engage with the user, then of course you're in danger. But we're talking again about jobs which are super specific and super output focused. UX is about results for the business, but most importantly for the user, for the human being. It's like, how do you actually go from the rough idea or rough go from the business to that it works for the customer, and they gladly pay that money to the business so it can develop. It doesn't matter where you go. That's ultimately the rudimentary value of the UX, to figure things out. And figuring things out is superhuman, because you need to be that versatile, and you need to not just be able to crunch the structured data. The UX designer is really good at taking something unstructured and then structuring it, and then making those assessments and ideas good for the user and for the business, and informing their hypotheses and those big ideations, so you come up with something better in the solution which just simply works. AI cannot do that, and we are far away from AI being able to do that. If you take something like compare a UX designer right now, a skilled UX designer, and an AI side by side, one can produce super predictable results and kind of do that grunt work, quote unquote. The other one is super creative, because they're human and they're not limited by a model or a data set they can receive. As a UX designer, you have all the flexibility in the world to take a 5-minute trip and talk to a person and get more insight. An AI cannot jump and do that just yet. Until we connect absolutely everything together, structure all the different things, not just YouTube videos or online articles, but actually train AI through the living scenarios, or yet to even understand what ethnography is, or what really good outcome-focused research is far, far away. The two are simply uncomparable. And maybe we as designers, technologists, just look at it at a lot of different themes, and again, we overlap them, and that's what amplifies that fear, because there's, of course, layoffs, a post-pandemic world, just unnerving and very shaken world altogether, and now you have AI tools and everything just seems like it's gaining velocity for change. But this is a simple change management which we need to personally do on ourselves and our career. Change is gonna happen. You need to roll with it. You need to use those AI tools. You need to learn from them, and you need to start applying them. But don't kid yourself thinking that tomorrow you're gonna lose a job because AI is gonna come in and gonna replace UX design. That's just not gonna happen. Again, it's gonna replace the specific bits. And one of the models, or one of the ideas I guess I like to use in a lot of my thinking, is the Lindy effect. And Lindy effect has been, I guess, underused in so many ways, but it's almost like why the change is not immediate, or why the things take time to change, and how much time is actually enough for the old methods or tools to die out and the new things to take on. And AI is not, any different, or you as a person, as a UX designer, or that craft, or that tool like Photoshop or Figma, whatever was changing over time, they're not immune to this. Lindy effect basically states that if you spend 50 years doing that and it has been in demand for human race, likely you're going to spend another 50 years plus 1 day for each day that element remains. And UX has been, it's just at its infancy. It's way too young to die. But even then, if we would take something like, I don't know, let's say Design Council Double Diamond. Let's use that as a framework and just say design really started when the Double Diamond was made 20 years ago. Well, the same Double Diamond or the Design Council's initiatives and frameworks, and let's say design is going to remain for another 20 years, give or take. The tools are going to change. The channels are going to change. The multitude of things you're going to need to consider is going to be ever growing. So you as a designer simply need to take on different hats and keep on learning. Things like connections and relationships, things like leadership and storytelling, things like orientation and vision setting. That cycle of the principal elements which make you a design leader or super effective UX designer cannot be replaced because they are human. They're very much so outside of a digital realm which AI is currently restricted. And unless every single person out there whose problems we're going to solve in the future is plugged into a quote-unquote matrix or some sort of brain interface of sorts, the neural network of sorts, readily live accessible, and I'm already diverging into some sort of sci-fi realms here. Unless that happens, you are not going to be able to replace all that pure leadership, pure visionary thinking. What the AI can really well do right now with the constraints in mind is this: thing. They are really good at the creation thing and then supporting your as a user of AI tool exploration, reframing, catalyzation, and what you do with those outputs and how do you achieve those outcomes you set yourself. But still, the tool itself just gives you outputs and that's it. Think that this is a tool to help you out, apply it. Make sure not to kid yourself that a chatbot is gonna replace you. They might replace the smallest of a fraction which you didn't care at all anyways, or which you knew that you're gonna need to replace at some point and maybe become a bit more strategic, or maybe you're gonna need to figure out how to be much more focused on human connections. But that's about it. It's just gonna be slow progress with a lot of tiny changes, and tools just keep evolving. But so what? You're still here doing UX and doing your best work. Just keep on learning, and that's about it. If you like this video, smash that like button, leave a comment down below. I love to hear the community takes, and maybe gonna do a follow-up again as the things pile up and as I get so much feedback and so many messages about that, because people generally fear this, but we shouldn't. So on that note, I'll see you next time.